So, ma'am, tell us something about yourself, your growing up years.
My growing up years,
Yeah.
I was born in 1953.
All
So
right.
I grew up in the 50s and 60s. Um, and of course, everything was very different then. For example, we were quite used to having, very little power, electricity, very little water. You filled your buckets early in the morning so that you had enough water.
Yeah.
Well, if there was no power, you couldn't read or study or do anything, and that was life. And my father was in the government of India,
Okay.
so you could be a senior bureaucrat and still live like everybody else.
That's right.
All the perks and privileges of today. And uh, I mean, I remember, well, let me put it another way. I remember the first time I saw uh, a prime ministerial convoy in these black security cars and SUVs and police escorts and so on. And I remember that because when I was growing up, our prime ministers drove around in, an ambassador with maybe a car in front and behind. And this business nowadays, where in Delhi roads are closed because the prime minister is going somewhere, it was unheard of. I mean,
That's
he went in ordinary traffic just like the rest of us did.
oh,
And that's the way it should be, in my opinion.
and that still happens in Western world.
It does. It does. It's our country, unfortunately. It's going a little bit like, my favorite comparison is with the communist Ceausescu of Romania.
Yeah.
We seem to be going rather in the mode of either the Latin American sort of military dictators or the East European communists. The kinds of protections now
Yeah.
that that the prime minister, the ministers, the rest of them have. That is not something that is normal for a democracy. At one point, I think it was maybe 15 years ago, uh, one of the Western embassies warned me that my name had come up in jihadi chatter. The post 9/11, everyone was busy listening to every conversation of radical or extremist groups. And so I remember calling up MEA and saying, is this something serious? And then the MEA people did their own inquiries. And they said to me they didn't think it was serious, but would I like a security detail? And my very first reaction, which I stuck with, was absolutely not. I mean, number one, my old grandmother lived with me. And if she suddenly saw a police guard, she would be worried all the time. And that was not a trauma I wanted to put her through. But
Yeah.
I also felt you're attracting far too much attention to yourself. If you if
True.
you need security detail, I mean, it was one thing for KPS Gill. He really was threatened.
Yeah.
Okay. But for the rest, I don't see it.
So how society have changed from then to now? Like when you were raised in Delhi and to now, what are the few prominent changes which you feel have been there?
I think that, from then to now, there have been many changes. I mean,
Good
uh,
or bad?
well, let's say, I mean, thinking of the good, I remember that most of my, at least until I was in my 30s, the situation in terms of what kinds of commodities you could acquire, uh, very limited. What you could get was truly, truly limited. Um, Even 17 years ago, uh, when my child came along, I remember scouring the streets of Delhi. I couldn't get Pampers. I couldn't get baby socks because everyone was knitted them,
Yeah,
all your
that's right.
your uncles, I mean, your aunts and cousins and so on.
Right.
So the whole range of things that you simply could not get. Now, I find that in my little hillside town, there are Pampers.
Okay.
So, this kind of change is, of course, very welcome. I also saw in India itself, um, there was a liberalization of the um, atmosphere, uh, the kinds of education that you can get today, you could not get in my time. Um, well, bookshops were very good. By the way, that is a decline. We had a lot more bookshops then
You-
than there are today. I find I go to Delhi, I can't find a really good bookshop to browse in. One or two Baharis maybe in Khan Market, one in Connaught Place and OUP shop. That's about it.
True.
Whereas when I was growing up, every colony had a good bookshop
Bookshop. Right.
that you could go to. Um, I miss not being able to play records. We
Ah,
used to,
yeah.
33 RPM, even those little old ones that were, just a single track.
Yeah.
All of that is gone. Everything is computerized.
That's right.
The sort of tactility of daily life it does not exist in the same way. Then this business of being able to order online, it's nice, but all those daily relationships one had with the vegetable shop guy, the grocery shop guy, the this, the that, the other, just walking
Yeah.
to the market, that kind of thing seems to have disappeared.
True.
Delhi, in that sense, I feel um, from around the 90s, began to become a somewhat alienated city. Before that, I mean, I used to live in first in Sundarnagar, then in Pandara Park. It was quite easy and normal to walk to Khan Market or to the Lodhi Gardens or to Safdarjung Tomb and so on. Now, it's very difficult. North still has a little more cohesiveness. But in the South, now colonies are like little pockets.
Yeah.
There's no sense of community of an area of the city. And I think that's a terrible loss and has led to some of the rising rates of crime that we see in Delhi, certainly rape. Now, it is also true, by the way, that we grew up, well, there was never a particularly friendly community police relationship in Delhi. Certainly not in the 60 years that I lived in Delhi. But the relationship is so much worse now.
These people are there to help us, to protect us. You don't have to get scared from them. So that relationship is certainly, you know, not healthy, not friendly. It is. It is. It is certainly very sad because it's a society, and they are like any. They're doing their job. It is a profession like any other profession.
Well, it should be.
Yeah.
Uh, it should be, but unfortunately, it isn't. When I was 18, which is almost 50 years ago, I remember coming back to my parents' house with a friend. We'd been at a party, and it was midnight, and we were in an auto, and the police. And now we lived in Lodhi Estate, so again, we're government people,
Yeah.
so to speak. The policeman stopped us, stopped the auto, just at the entrance to our little crescent, Tughlaq, at the Tughlaq Road crossing, and said, "Oh, what are you doing? Where are you going so late at night?" and so on. And the friend who was with me, who, by the way, is also the son of a government servant, started to panic. And I said to him, "What on earth are you afraid of?" And I said to the policeman, "We've been to a party, we're going home. My house is, 10 meters down the road. And this is my name, and this is my father's name. And what are your questions?" He got very huffy. He said, "Oh, if you're going to adopt that tone with me, I'm going to take you to the police station." Uh, uh, And I said, he wanted a bribe.
Yeah,
I said, fine, take us to the police station. And I will, and by the way, we didn't have mobile phones then.
that's
And
right.
I said, I'll use your phone to call my father and he'll vouch for me
Yeah.
and tell you that everything that I've said is the truth. So frankly, the police were never our friends. And that is one of the tragedies, I would say.
You are an Indian feminist. You talk about women empowerment, equal rights. What exactly women empowerment it is according to you?
It goes from the practical
Yes,
to the tangible.
right,
Practically, there are such simple basic things. You should be able to feel that you can walk down a street safely without being raped
right.
and murdered. You should be able to work without being frightened again of being molested or harassed or improper favors demanded of you in the workplace. Those are just such basic. You should be able to have the same kind of nutrition that a man gets or a boy gets. You should be able to have the same kinds of educational opportunities as a boy or a man. First of all, we have a right not to be ogled and abused by boys and men. That is a right.
Yeah,
And of course, we should have all the opportunity rights. All of this, by the way, is given in our constitution. We've talked about the basics, that certainly the right to safety, the right to health, the right to nutrition, the right to education, all of these rights are denied. The right to work, all of these rights are denied. Let's go beyond that. What is empowerment? Empowerment should be that sense within you that says, yes, I have a right to be here, or that says even more than that, hey, here's something I want to do. It could be actually serving a community. Here's something I want to do. I should be able to do it. That's empowerment, that I should feel I can do whatever I want to do, that I can fulfill my dreams, that I can work towards ideals, values. Our country was founded on the basis of ideals and values. The most, humiliating shame for me is that our women cannot work for those values and ideals.
right.
We cannot go out and teach children in the night. We cannot go out and serve meals to poor in a langar at night. What is this? Why should we not be able to do these things? What is a girl doing out on the streets at night? What is a girl doing not wearing this garment and wearing that garment?
Absolutely.
Hijab se pata chalta hai ki kya hai.
आप जैसे
I mean,
कपड़े पहने हैं उससे पता चलता है आप कैसे हैं, right?
अब देखो, do I not, I should have the right for that. My parents married 70 years ago out of their freedom of choice. Neither of their parents put up any fuss or resistance. In fact, the two families welcomed each other, even though my mother came from a Brahmin family and my father from a Banya family. There was no issue at all.
Why divorce is taken as a setback or as a negative factor in our society?
First of all, in my opinion, it's your life and
It's
it's
all
your
right.
choice.
Right.
It's your private business, it's your affair. You want to marry, it's your choice. You want to divorce, it's your choice. There are courts of law to which you can and should go for your divorce. Now, the unfortunate and terrible thing in our country is that the family should never be able to have that kind of control over you, right?
Yeah.
You should be, say, for example, if your husband is violent or abusive, you should be able to go to the police immediately. You should be taken straight away to a good women's shelter where you are protected and cared for until your divorce can come through or whatever it is, or action is taken against the man. None of these things exist in our country.
So this is actually my next question, that women does not have a unity in themselves. If they have a unity in themselves, I don't think so that there would be anyone who would have a strength or a guts to say something to them.
Unity is a very difficult and problematic issue. Uh, as long as power is so unequal,
Yeah.
and you have large numbers of women who are completely dependent, say, on their family, on their fathers and uncles and husbands and so on. They have no place they can go. They are going to always echo the views of the powerful because they have no option. So one cannot demand unity in that sense because the power equation is so unbalanced. However, what one can demand is that we were founded on the basis of improving everybody's lot, equality and justice for all Indians, not for this group or that group of Indians. Look, in my time, I was one of the active members of the women's movement of the 70s and 80s. There were large number of women's groups. We were the ones who actually pushed for and drafted the first proposals and even the law for the National Commission for Women. One point we had made then was that the commissioners for the commissions of women must be appointed by independent committee of activists, of women activists who have on the ground knowledge and experience. They are the ones who should make the selection. Why have they not put resources into the independent women's shelters?
Yeah.
Strengthen them, make them bigger, tie them up with, training and education and job opportunities. So many things you can do. You just think to yourself, even today, so many women's groups, why don't you devolve to them? The way that under the UPA, these Delhi Mohalla committees were set up,
Yeah. Right.
Why can't you do that?
Yeah.
Let there be women committees in all the areas. Let them have some rights to make the police act or do this or do that, get CCTVs in, unlit roads, all that kind of thing. Let civil society do it.
You are a specialist in peace building and peacemaking. We are a country of over 1.3 billion. I think we need peace more than anyone else need it. What do you think as an individual? How can we contribute to our country for this peacemaking and peace building? Each individual.
Well, I mean, the first thing is, of course, stop being abusive on social media.
Okay.
Each individual and each citizen can at least do that.
True.
Cultivate a civil language. It is possible to resolve disputes in a civil way. You don't have to abuse each other. So that's the first and foremost. Why should we listen to speeches in which members of our country, citizens of our country, are called termites? I mean, come on.
Right.
We should not be listening to that. Do you know that even the right-wing media in the United States, when President Trump got too abusive, they just blocked him off the air. And this is during an election campaign, they block him. Why can you not learn that? Why do I have to see that on every single chat show, for one civil person, there are 3 abusive people? Why? Why do I have to see this? Why are people allowed to spread lies and propaganda?
There is a notion where if you shout, you're powerful.
When we grew up, abusiveness was, or shouting was a sign of not only bad manners, but your own cowardice. If you have faith in your belief, then you should be able to persuade people. You don't bully them.
Yeah, you don't bully them. Absolutely. Uh, how it is raising children now, these days, from especially from past 10 years, children have a lot of stress. Like we as a parent or as an individual say that we have a lot of stress and children are absolutely free mind, they don't have responsibilities. Since I'm teaching theater to little children, I understand them, I can feel them, and I feel that these children have their own stress, and more now than it was there during my time. That's because now parent pressure, relative pressure, teacher pressure, pressure from your own self. Parent would say, look, that person is so good in this thing. Relative would say, listen, my child is excelling in this. And the child says, my friend is doing this. And the poor child is confused that what do I do now as a parent? If you have to give an advice to a parent, that how a children should be raised to have an overall development of a child, then getting 100 out of 100.
You know, again, when I was growing up, that wasn't the case for us. I mean, well, my parents both worked. A lot of my friends' parents also worked, and so we were a pretty happy-go-lucky lot. We always hung out together after school in somebody or another's house. We didn't have really much pressure on homework and this kind of thing. And doing well, getting 100 on 100. I don't think I knew a single person actually who got even 90 on 100, let alone 100 on 100. Um, and my mother used to always laugh that it didn't matter whether you put me in a class of 20 or a class of 100, I was always the 50% middle point. And that is true. Those were my grades all along. And then it didn't stop me from doing what I wanted to do and enjoying it greatly. And I've been very lucky, actually. Every single job I've done, I have enjoyed. Uh, right from day one, first at the top, encourage problem solving, which goes back also to the conflict issue. Encourage people to think outside the boundary, encourage them to think what could be better. Make a leap, it can be a leap into 100 years hence. That kind of imagination. Encourage that in your employment. Then you can start also saying, let us encourage it in education. That's one part. The other part is, again, it goes to jobs, as to employment as well as to education, is that children have to, our young adults have to be ready to try their hand at any type of work.
So, ma'am, you said when you were growing up, you had bookshops at every corner, and now everything is digital. What do you think? Like impact of digital education on children, and not more of books. Now you see a lot of bookshops are shutting down, which is sad because I still feel when I have a book in my hand, the feeling of reading from a book is absolutely different, which I can never feel on my laptop or a computer. So how this would take maybe after 5 to 10 years?
I mean, this pandemic has changed life so dramatically.
Yeah.
But let's consider it an aberration. That after a year or 2 years, some degree of normal living will resume. Um, in that, so I'm assuming that at the moment, of course, we have no option. We cannot go to libraries. We cannot go to bookshops. We have to work digitally. But what I have seen with my own child is that the trouble with going digital and this I've seen way before the pandemic and encountered myself, is that what's available on the web may seem infinite and vast, but is also extremely limited. First problem is that mostly, of course, WhatsApp has made it even worse, that now you only Twitter and WhatsApp, you only do, uh, uh, um, two sentence things.
Yeah.
But even when I would research on the web, I found that generally the kind of thing I could get would be news article length, short pieces. But serious academic articles, you would still have to be subscribed to an academic site in order to get those. And then we never had that kind of powerful internet that you could easily get from an academic site. So a library was always a preferred option. Now, what I see with the kids is that no one has taught them really what is a good, a reliable or trustworthy site and what is not. Because, of course, there's so much lies and propaganda on the internet that you don't know what you can. I mean, I taught MA level. I used to find that when I set an assignment, I would get essays cut and paste from Wikipedia. And Wikipedia is absolutely not a reliable source. But then I had a wonderful episode in one of my children's schools. A teacher gave cannot give you the exact detail, but it was three really very abusive quotations about the media and said something about analyze. So I looked at those and I said, this is really very peculiar. This is cannot be, it can't have been said by anyone that that's known or reliable or trustworthy. So I looked it up, and believe it or not, that section, it was, I think, Wikipedia, it was actually headed imaginary abuses of journalists. And this teacher had not bothered to look at that before setting an assignment for the kids. And it's the kind of trap you can easily fall into if you rely only on digital.